You're tuning to Relationship Wednesday, where we don't protect your comfort. We expose the lies, set fire to the bullshit, and talk about love the way it actually feels, not the way it's marketed. This is the Bad Influence Podcast. Yeah, the one they warn you about. Because it doesn't help you cope, it forces you to confront. I'm your host, Jordan Banderas, and today we're cutting through manipulation, codependency, and emotional avoidance with precision. If you're tired of walking on eggshells, if you're tired of pretending everything is fine, if your relationship looks good on the outside but feels hollow when the door closes, this ends now. Raw truth, real growth, no emotional babysitting. Let's get into it. I honestly think that sex didn't lose its meaning. The problem is that we stop bringing meaning into it. And the moment intimacy scares you, sex stops being connection and turns into escape. Not because bodies stop touching, but because presence left the room. When did sex stop feeling like something you share and start feeling like something you just do? You remember the shift? Same act, same bodies, same bed, different absence. Sex doesn't lose meaning when skin touches. It loses meaning when minds disappear, when eye contact turns into distraction, when touch turns mechanical, when you're physically close but emotionally somewhere else. If you want connection back, you don't change positions. You change presence. So be honest with yourself. Are you craving sex or craving closeness and settling for the fastest substitute? Because desire often disguises loneliness, and sex is quicker than vulnerability, safer than asking to be seen. You reach for skin because asking for closeness feels risky, because needing someone feels exposed, because saying I want you to actually be here with me feels terrifying. So instead, you settle for friction, release, and the silence afterward. So ask yourself what you actually want before you reach for the substitute, because relief and connection are not the same thing. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. Sex is often used to avoid emotional exposure. You can touch without talking. You can climax without connecting. You can release without resolving anything. And for a while, that works. Until intimacy notices what you've been hiding. Chemistry can hide emotional absence. Speed can hide emptiness. Performance can hide disconnection. But stillness exposes everything. And that's where most people panic. Most people don't lose intimacy overnight. They lose it slowly, quietly, in ways that don't feel dramatic enough to panic, until one day they realize they're sharing a bed with someone they don't feel close to anymore. Not angry, Not explosive, just distant. That distance doesn't come from lack of sex. It comes from sex being used to avoid everything else. Because real intimacy requires risk. It requires presence. And presence forces honesty. And honesty threatens the stories you've been telling yourself about how fine things are. A friend of mine told me something that stopped me cold. He didn't raise his voice, didn't dramatize it. He just said quietly, sex in my marriage doesn't feel like connection anymore. It feels like homework. Not desire, not excitement, not curiosity, obligation. Something to check off, something to get through, something that happens because it's been too long, even when neither of them wanted to, even when the energy wasn't there, even when both felt disconnected. They still do it just to say it happened. No spark, no presence, no them. Just bodies going through motions their hearts had already checked out of. And the scariest part, they both thought this was normal. That's the part nobody talks about. When sex becomes a task instead of a meeting point. When it's done out of duty instead of desire. When nobody feels fulfilled, but everyone pretends this is what long-term love looks like. That's not maturity. That's emotional starvation wearing a wedding ring. That's two people surviving the same house instead of sharing the same life. And they don't fight about it. They don't scream. They don't implode. They just slowly disappear from each other. I told him something he wasn't expecting to hear. The problem isn't sex. It's connection. Attraction wasn't gone. Commitment wasn't gone. Loyalty wasn't gone. Presence was gone. So sex became something they completed instead of something they entered. It became mechanical because the relationship had gone quiet. And when sex is just an act, nobody wins in the end. Not the one who initiates, not the one who agrees, not the relationship pretending it's alive. Because bodies can touch while souls stay separate. And that kind of loneliness hurts worse than being alone. Because at least alone makes sense. Disconnected but together feels like betrayal. And that's when resentment starts growing teeth. Here's the thing. Most people didn't learn sex through truth. They learned it through fantasy, through pressure, through porn, through silence, through shame. So sex stopped being a language and became a performance, a script you're supposed to follow, a role you're supposed to play. Something to do right instead of something to feel deeply. Nobody taught you how to bring your heart into the room. They taught you how to bring your body. So now you know how to touch, but you don't know how to stay. You know how to finish, but not how to be seen. Sex becomes the easiest detour around discomfort. You can touch without talking, release without resolving. You can climax without ever confronting what's broken. but avoidance always charges interest, and intimacy keeps the receipt. You don't pay for it right away. You pay for it later. In distance, in tension, in quiet resentment. Chemistry can hide emotional absence. Speed can hide emptiness. Novelty can hide disconnection. But stillness exposes everything. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to sit with. Vulnerability scares people more than sex ever did. Bodies are easier than hearts. Skin is safer than truth. You can be desired and still unseen. Touch and still alone. You can share a bed every night and still feel like you're sleeping next to a stranger. That's the moment most people start numbing. Scrolling, drinking, fantasizing, because feeling nothing feels safer than admitting what's missing. So decide. Do you want relief or recognition? Relief keeps you comfortable. Recognition changes your life. Relief keeps the peace. Recognition restores intimacy. Relief avoids conflict. Recognition demands honesty. And honesty is the price of real connection. Not comfort, not chemistry, not convenience. Truth. Truth spoken before touch. Truth allowed into the room. Because sex without truth eventually feels hollow. And intimacy without honesty eventually dies quietly. Not in a fight, not in betrayal, but in silence. And silence is the most dangerous place a relationship can live. Because nothing grows there. Sex becomes sacred again when intimacy leads. Not because it's perfect, but because two people are actually there. Not performing, not proving, not escaping. Present. Slower. More honest. Less performative. Less about doing it right. More about being real. Sex stops being a transaction and becomes a conversation. You feel each other again, not just physically, emotionally. The room changes, the energy shifts, the silence stops feeling heavy and starts feeling safe. Here's what nobody wants to admit. What happens outside the bedroom decides everything that happens inside it. Trust built during the day changes everything at night. Emotional safety is the foreplay nobody teaches you. Feeling seen is the desire nobody can fake. If you don't talk during the day, you're not suddenly intimate at night. If you don't feel safe being honest, you won't feel free being naked. I told my friend they didn't need a new technique. They didn't need new positions. They didn't need novelty. They needed to remember why they chose each other. The conversations, the curiosity, the emotional safety. Because sex doesn't create intimacy. Intimacy gives sex meaning. If you want meaning back, Speak before you touch. One honest sentence. No script. No polish. Just say, I feel distant. I miss you. I don't feel connected right now. Awkwardness is the doorway. On the other side is depth. Presence isn't technique, it's courage. So, choose connection over convenience. Stop using sex to escape closeness. Let intimacy lead. Let sex follow. Let it be slower. Let it be real. Let it be sacred again. Not because it's perfect, but because you're actually there. That's the difference between relief and fulfillment, between habit and hunger, between loneliness and love. And remember, the choice is yours. And that's it for today. If this episode peeled the mask off your relationship, don't ignore it. You deserve more than crumbs. Draw the damn line. This is the Bad Influence Podcast. Know your worth. Speak your truth. Never flinch. And have a great day.